Hey gang, so far in this series we have built an app called Doable from scratch. It's right here and it looks amazing. We scaffolded our to-dos, we added projects by hand, we styled everything with Tailwind, and it's looking beautiful now by the way, and we tied it all together with associations and a clean, modern interface. But now, it's time to ship. In this video, we're going to deploy Doable to production using Kamal, the deployment tool that ships with Rails 8. No Heroku, no render, no Vercel, no third-party glue, just Rails on a machine. Let's get into it. Now, Kamal is a great deployment tool that works wonderfully for Rails applications. It does a lot of things, but for the purpose of this video, we are going to break it down into the very basics to show off how easy it is to deploy a real application to an actual server somewhere in the cloud or even locally. Now at the main Kamal website, you can see all the documentations and all the different things that Kamal can do, but really quickly, let's just break this down into a super scientific diagram to show off how we're gonna use it today. So let's just say we are currently on our machine. This is our computer. And on our computer, we have our Rails application. And within our Rails application, we have a program we can use called Kamal. Now Kamal is fantastic, and basically what it does is it will build Docker images so that you can pull those images down from a container registry on a server that you want to deploy an image onto. Then essentially all you do is run that image on that server. Let's look at a quick workflow for how this works. On your local computer, you have Kamal, and when you want to deploy with Kamal, essentially what's going to happen is that Kamal will actually reach out to Git. It's going to use GitHub to grab all the code, all the latest code that you have in your application. And once Kamal grabs all of that code, Kamal will then build a new image out of that code. Now the image is actually a pretty straightforward container, and this container will essentially just run your Ruby on Rails application. Then what Kamal will do is it'll take your image and push it to a registry. Now this registry could be anything. Now in this example, we're just going to be using DockerHub. DockerHub is a registry where you can store images. We could also use other things like there's a Amazon solution for images, there's a GitHub solution for storing images. There's a lot of different things out there, but for us, like I said, we're just going to be using DockerHub, and Kamal will push the image to DockerHub. And then we have our system that we're deploying to. Now in our case, we're actually going to be using a VPS, and this VPS is DigitalOcean. We're just going to be grabbing a quick droplet on DigitalOcean, and we're going to be deploying everything to that. So what happens is here, Kamal will grab all the code from GitHub, create a new image, push that image to our DockerHub or GitHub container registry, and then it will SSH into our machine over here. We're going to type SSH right here, and it will pull from this registry the new container, or the new image rather, that it just created, and it will then run the image. That's essentially how Kamal works, at least how we're going to use it. So let's go ahead and get this up and running in our application. Now again, in this video, we're going to be using DockerHub as our container registry. It's simple and it just kind of works out of the box, especially with Kamal. If you don't have a DockerHub account, there is a link in the description to set one up, and yeah, it's free for public images. It's pretty straightforward. Now to start setting up how we deploy things with Kamal in our application, we want to go to our deploy.yml file. This exists in our config directory, which is where, of course, everything gets configured for our Rails application. Now our configuration starts off pretty simply. The name of our service, which is the name of our application, it's called Doable, so we will leave that as is. And then we talk about the name of our container's image on line number 5 here. Now this is the name of the container image we will be using to push to the container registry, and then to pull down from that registry onto the machine we're actually deploying to. So this name actually matters. And in our case, we want to set this one up as Typecraft HQ/Doable. Typecraft HQ is actually our username on DockerHub, and it's private. And since we want to keep our app secure, the DockerHub repo isn't public, and that means we need a way to access it. Now to do this, we can create a token, and we'll be creating images with this, so we're we're going to give it full access. Now, it's super easy to create tokens on DockerHub. I'm sure for every other registry, you can create tokens in a similar way, but once you are logged in, we can go to our account settings, click on personal access tokens, and click on generate a new token. Now, this could be for the doable app or whatever. I can call it the doable app token. This is what I did to generate the token that we're going to be using in this deploy.yml file. It's pretty straightforward. Now, in this YAML file, if we scroll down, we can see Kamal registry password. This is where we use that token that we created in DockerHub. This Kamal registry password essentially stands for our container registries token. Those are pretty similar things. You can think of those two terms as synonyms. But here's the thing, how do we set our Kamal registry password? Well, there's another file we want to worry about here called .kamal/secrets. Now in this file on line 13 and 14, we see that it says we can grab the registry password from env. So it's going to set this variable to be used in deploy.yml right here from our environment, which is $Kamal registry password. Now, in the sake of this video, all we're going to do here is we're going to set Kamal registry password in our terminal when we run the commands for Kamal. So what we're going to do here is type Kamal registry password equals token. And then we're going to type all of our Kamal commands afterwards. That is how we can set this in our environment variable. Quick shout out, you wouldn't want to do this when you're actually deploying something to production. You would want to use a more secure way to store this credential. You might want to use something like .env, which is a Ruby gem, or you use something that I've seen many times throughout my career. You use 1Password to actually vault your secret, and you actually have the ability to fetch these secrets using Kamal directly from 1Password as an adapter. This is a really nice way to store your secrets and fetch them using Kamal. But in our instance, just to show this off, we're going to type it into our command line just like this. And again, to finalize setting up our registry connection with Kamal, we want to set our username to Typecraft HQ. This is the username that we set all the way up on line number 5 here. Our image name is going to be called Typecraft HQ/doable. And then under here, we set our username to Typecraft HQ. These two things match. This is how we connect Kamal to the container registry. Okay, so now we've taken care of the connection between Kamal and the container registry. When Kamal builds a new container image, it will deploy it to that registry, which will then be pulled down onto our server and then run. Speaking of server, let's set that up next. Now in this example, we're going to be deploying to a VPS. In our case, it's a plain Ubuntu droplet on DigitalOcean. We actually created one right here. Now, don't worry too much about this. It's a pretty straightforward process to create a droplet. The only necessity that you need is that you need to be able to SSH into this server from wherever you're deploying it. This could be DigitalOcean, could be Amazon, it could be a machine somewhere in your office maybe that you can deploy to. Other than being able to SSH into your machine, you don't need any other setup. Kamal will take care of everything else, which means installing Docker, grabbing your image from the container registry, and then running that image in a new container, thus running your application. All we need is an IP address, which we will plug into deploy.yml. Here's our IP address for a DigitalOcean droplet. I can copy that, go to config deploy.yml, and on line number 10 here, we can just hit paste, and that is the new IP address that we are going to deploy to for our web server. Nice. Now down in the proxy section of this deploy.yml configuration file, we have host. Now host is something that you don't necessarily need here, but for our purposes, we actually have a domain that's typecraft.dev, and we created a subdomain called doable.typecraft.dev. Now we used our domain registry to create a subdomain that we can then point to this IP address. So that is something that we've done on our own. You don't have to do this, but for us, it's just a nice little bit of polish, and it's really not that hard at all. But what you get here is you get SSL for free. Now Kamal will take care of the SSL through Let's Encrypt. Now if you've ever tried to set up SSL on a machine before, it's a pain. Kamal takes care of this, no problem. So now when you deploy, you can go to the HTTPS, the secure HTTP version of your web application, and it's just gonna work. This is amazing. Now last but not least, the last bit of configuration we wanna worry about, specifically because we're using SQLite in this application, application, which is the default on Ruby on Rails, we want to scroll down in our configuration to the volume section. Now, if we just read the comments here, we can see it says, use a persistent storage volume for SQLite databases, files, and local active storage files. You see, SQLite is a file system database. It stores everything on a file on your database. So in DigitalOcean, we could just store this locally on this server itself, but what if you change servers? What if you want to up the RAM in a server? What if the server goes down? You somehow have to reset it, or you lose something. You don't want to lose anything. So we actually created a volume that we attached to our server, and it is called volume NYC06. So under the volume section, we actually want to change doable storage to say volume underscore NYC1 underscore 06. That is what DigitalOcean is going to give to us for our volume that we can put our file that is our SQLite database onto. Okay, and that should be all the configuration we need to actually deploy to this DigitalOcean droplet. We have now set up our service name. We have our image name, which is our container registry username and the image name that we want. We have our web server, which is this DigitalOcean droplet. We also have a proxy, and our host is a subdomain on typecraft.dev that we set up ourselves. Now our registry, as we said before, is going to be DockerHub, and we're going to be using Typecraft HQ, that is our account name. We have our Kamal registry password, that is the DockerHub token that we've created to use here. And we made sure that the volume that we set up in DigitalOcean is going to be mounted so that we use an off the server volume for our SQLite database. And again, we didn't have to do that, but that's just best practice and it makes me feel good inside. Okay, so now we are ready to go ahead and set up Kamal on our server, which is a DigitalOcean droplet. We can paste, as we said before, our Kamal registry password, which is the token that we created for this example. Now, don't worry, we're going to delete this token so that anyone who sees this can't use it. I don't trust you guys. Just kidding. You're all my friends and I trust you very much, but just in case, we're going to go ahead and delete this token after we use it here in this video. Now we have the Kamal registry password in our environment. We can run Kamal setup, and this will do everything we need to set up Kamal on our DigitalOcean server. Now, before we run this command, there's one last thing we need on our system to make sure that we can fully run Kamal, and that is Docker installed locally. You see, for me, I have Docker desktop installed on this Mac machine. You can install it however you want on whatever system you're running, but for me, Docker desktop works pretty well. Now, once again, we installed Docker because we are actually creating a Docker image that we're pushing to this Docker registry that we signed up for. And you can look at our Docker file. It is in the root directory of our application, and that's where it lives. And we can see here that it's just a pretty simple Docker file, ships with Rails 8. And at the end of the day, it builds our Rails application with all the gems and things that we need and just runs bin Rails server. That is how it works. Okay, so now we're ready to run Kamal setup. Let's see what this does. Okay, now our Kamal setup command has been completed. Let's actually look through it and see what happened. Now, if we scroll through from top to bottom here, from the start of our Kamal setup command, we can see that it builds from a local Git clone. It builds the new Docker image based on the Docker file in our application. Then we scroll down and scroll down and scroll down. We can see that this is actually still building our Docker image, and then it finishes the image in 86 seconds. And then what we see here is actually we push the image to Typecraft HQ doable, and then we SSH into our machine. We set up the things that we need. We pull down from Typecraft HQ/doable. We set up a couple of things, then we run Docker, and it's all set. We have now deployed to production. So let's go ahead and see if our app is actually running. We can go to doable.typecraft.dev/to-dos. And I almost can't believe this. It's already up and running. We have doable.typecraft.dev. This is amazing. This is our whole entire app in production. Now, of course, Kamal isn't just for deploying. You can also do many other helpful commands using Kamal. Here's just a couple. For starters, we can run Kamal logs, and that's how we can see our logs as we navigate through our to-do application. We see we have all these logs here. It's very similar to what this looked like when we were running this locally. We can also type Kamal console to get a nice interactive Rails console on production, much like we would locally. Now we can type to-do.all and see that, yep, we haven't created any to-dos yet in production, but I'm sure the users are coming. I'm sure they're coming very soon. And if you need to roll back your deploy to a previous version, you can type Kamal roll back. Now I'm not going to do this now. I just deployed my first version, but that's there if you need it. There's a ton more you can do with Kamal, so check it out. It's pretty amazing. But this is really great. You see, with just a few lines in a deploy.yml file, we have deployed a full Rails application on our own VPS, which is DigitalOcean. We have a real domain, and we have full HTTPS with Let's Encrypt. We didn't even write a Docker file. It just came with Rails. It was just here. We didn't even install Kamal. That came with Rails too. We didn't use any third-party platform because we didn't need to, and now we just have our stuff on a machine that we control in the cloud. You see, the conventions of Rails aren't just about writing code. They extend all the way from Rails new to Kamal deploy. Now in the next video, we're going to wrap all this up. We're going to reflect on everything we built in Doable and talk about where we go next. So I'll see you in the next video, and hey, thanks nerds.